Hello.
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 And it's been a minute since we've done this. Welcome back to the Free Rotation podcast. The thing that hasn't been happening in the last 3 years. Anybody want to say hi? Anybody remember? I'm Becky.
I'm Chris. What's up, world?
I'm Angie.
Angie's actually a cat now.
It's a Kiki.
She morphed into a cat a long time ago, and now she's a cat.
This is a little kitty.
So yeah, we're back, guys. Very exciting. So how's everybody doing? It's a live recording. Anybody want to say how everybody's been doing since the last time we were here?
Busy. Life is life. And I hope everybody that's listening has enjoyed their time away as well.
Angie.
It's been good. Busy.
Okay. Well, so yeah, we are gonna try this out. If there's weird sound issues, it's just gonna be what it is for right now until we can figure out how to make sure the sound works better. But this will hopefully be a weekly ish podcast, maybe again, until we get everything kind of sorted. So bear with us. This is going to be a live recording on Twitch. It'll also be a live recording that comes up on YouTube later. And then we will have the normal podcast episodes on our normal audio stuff. It literally blanked out because we haven't had to do this in so long. I don't remember what it is. So yeah, guys, let's pick up. It's been a minute. So I decided to do a new episode. And I really wanted to talk about something that was really interesting when I was a kid that, kind of it weirdly didn't affect my life, but it was weirdly like on the adjacent outskirts of where I grew up just because I was raised in Savannah a lot. It was like my second home. And so I really, 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 really wanted to do an episode on Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. And so I thought it would be interesting. It's one of the biggest true crime cases to ever come through Savannah. I think it's probably one of the biggest true crime cases in America. And there was a book written about it in the 90s called Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. It ended up becoming a pretty big, I don't know. It was one of those stories that was kind of made Savannah known. It was like Forrest Gump and Savannah were sort of intermingled. And then on top of it, it was, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. So if you go to Savannah, a lot of people were touring Savannah just to see this kind of the story that had happened. So do you guys familiar with it?
I read the book back in like 96 ish, I think. And that was the last time I've thought about this.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it was, I think it was like, I mean, I was about to ask you, how about you?
Yeah, I've seen like bits of the movie and heard about the book, but it's not something I've ever really looked into. It looked neat. I thought it was paranormal. And then when I figured out it was true crime, I stopped paying attention to it.
I think the story itself, like the book, it was definitely meant to be more of a true crime novel, but I think they added the paranormal elements just because it was such a sensation around Savannah. And a lot of the stuff that they talk about in like the Savannah culture is that the book is a nonfiction fiction. John Barrett wasn't there when the shooting happened. He kind of inserts himself as like this third party narrator. And on top of it, he ends up, it comes out a lot later. Like a lot of the stuff that he sort of fixated on wasn't even part of the actual true crime novel. It was more so about the adjacent characters more so than anything. Because I think he was trying to kind of, talk about Savannah and how Savannah's so eccentric. With the background being this true crime story. So,
and didn't he also tell the story like out of order? Like,
yes.
Yeah.
So the book itself was big sensation, big news. But I really wanted to talk about the true crime aspect, and I actually wanted to talk about the true story because I think it was actually a lot more interesting than what people give it credit for. You don't. Go ahead.
When we did the tour in Savannah and happened to walk adjacent to it, you know, it's interesting because the tours in Savannah don't focus on this. They talk about everything pretty much but this. So I kind of feel like the people are a little over it. But that house and the grounds are beautiful.
Yeah,
But it lends it more paranormal.
yeah, I think I think it's one of those things where it's like the oversaturation of the story in Savannah is kind of there's like fatigue to it, but
They still show you the Forrest Gump bench every time.
they sure do. They actually talk about that, like Savannah had a lot of tourism at the time, right before the book came out, and then right after that, it was like over like 400% tourist. People showed up. I don't know. It was a crazy number, and it's even now. I think they have a true crime paranormal tour of what happened in Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil.
I mean, I'd like to go see the statue, touch
The
its
Bird Girl,
boobies.
yeah. The Bird Girl statue?
No, just the other one, the one that you see on the cover of the book.
That's the Bird Girl statue.
Yeah, that's the one in the park, right?
It's not in the park anymore. It's at Telfair Museum because
Yeah, they moved it,
Now, why?
people were vandalizing it.
touching its boobies.
I mean, it probably was happening like that, but people were actually vandalizing it in Bonaventure
They made
Cemetery.
it look like a little Venus statue, and it
It-
has birds on its head, right? It didn't look
has-
like a girl.
If you look at the actual picture of it, it is a statue of it's called the Bird Girl because she has two bird bats in her hand.
Yeah.
So I love the story.
I want to touch her bird baths.
I didn't know
Oh
they
my-
moved it. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think people were vandalizing it really badly. It's kind of one of those, it's one of those things.
If you're listening to this and you fuck with statues, stop listening and go get help because leave
Yeah.
shit
Yeah.
alone.
It's insane, but
Unless, never mind. But Becky, is it true? Hang on. Okay, wasn't this like a homosexual thing?
yes, this is also one of the big things about this story that people don't realize. Well, they do realize it, but it was, they added a trans person to the story. I mean, the Lady Chablet and all the people involved in this, they added that
Because she was a drag queen, right?
she was a drag queen, but there was others they added because they wanted to add the eccentricities of Savannah. When meanwhile, the entire story itself is insane as it is.
Also, wasn't one of the guys that's actually involved with the real trial, wasn't he gay? But in the book, they made him married to a woman. Like they made him straight in the book.
You know what? I don't know. There wasn't. So my sources is Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, of course,
Sure.
and then the other sources were a couple of news articles that came out at the time. So the Savannah or Georgia Gazette, Savannah Times. I actually read the case law that came out during this time, just because I have access to that. Woohoo, being a lawyer school. And then there was a book called Lawyer Games after the Midnight of Garden of Good and Evil. And it was actually written by the chief prosecuting attorney for the first trial. And that's the other big thing about this story is that it's not only that it was one trial, there was 4 trials. And so I did write up a little thing because I really wanted people to kind of get the sense of what Savannah is like, just because I don't think people know unless you've ever been to Savannah. So this is gonna be the one thing I read, but it was I wanted to be able to capture what Savannah was like for people and not necessarily just kind of explain it off the top. So like I said, Savannah has always been as close to a second home to me as anywhere else. My family is from Savannah, and I've spent a ton of time in the city and its neighboring areas. But trying to describe Savannah in a sense is like trying to describe the taste of a food to somebody who's deathly allergic to it. Angie, you would know what this is like. It is only way to really understand Savannah is to experience it. You can approach a place like Savannah in so many different ways. Maybe you want to experience tourism in the southern coastal setting. Savannah sits at the mouth of the Savannah River, which empties into the Atlantic Ocean. Savannah is just an hour's trip to the Golden Isles that dot the Georgia and Florida coast. You can visit Tybee Island for the full beach vibes, or you can go to a place like Skidaway or Thunderbolt for more of that low country marshland that is unique to the southern coastline. Maybe you want to experience the night and bar life, which is prevalent in a place like Savannah. Savannah is an open container city, which allegedly they're getting one here too, which is crazy. You can walk around River Street and bar hop until the early hours of the morning. Many come to Savannah to try an authentic Chatham artillery punch, which Leslin has it. George Washington was presented the punch when he arrived at the Chatham Artillery in 1792 after he gave the regiment 2 cannons. In actuality, the recipe became popular after Prohibition, which Savannah even has its own museum dedicated to the history of Prohibition and Savannah's place in it. Speaking of history, Savannah is rife with it for the history buffs. The first city founded in Savannah was in 1733. James Oglethorpe created Savannah as a first planned city of Georgia, which would be the philanthropic debtors colony for London's working poor.
That's where Becky's family's from.
That's true. Only 4 things were banned in Savannah's charter: slaves, liquor, lawyers, and Catholics. Now, we all know this wouldn't last, but you can still see the scars from centuries Savannah has dealt with since founded. The wars from the Spanish to the Civil War and to the city surrender during the Sherman's March to the Sea, to the Civil Rights Movement and everything in between. In a city that has persisted in life, there also comes the balance, which is death. You see, Savannah isn't just known for its picturesque square, sweeping Spanish moss, and Southern cuisine. My love for Savannah runs deep in a way that's slightly morbid, but is also so ingrained in its history that anyone who visits is well familiar with Savannah's reputation and why death is so intertwined in its roots. Atlanta, Georgia's capital, for example, carries the moniker as the city beneath the trees. Savannah, in turn, is called the city built upon the dead. From fires to yellow fever to the earliest wars fought in American soil, at night you can still kind of feel that energy in the air as you walk the city. It's not uncommon to see ghost tours happening year-round, and it makes sense. Savannah is arguably one of the most haunted cities in the U.S., but also possibly in the world. Tour guides will take you down the streets and alleys that have been paved over unmarked graves, showing you famous landmarks of death like Sorrel Weed House, Moon River Brewery, I can't speak, and Colonial Park Cemetery. One of the most famous and beautiful cemeteries in the world, Bonaventure Cemetery, is a must-see for any tourist interested in the macabre and is actually featured in the story we're going to tell you today. But it's not just the wars or the plagues or the fires that have led Savannah to being considered a city of death. There's also your everyday run-of-the-mill murders. But in the South, especially in a city like Savannah, if you have a high-profile murder, it's not going to be boring. So today, I'm going to tell you about Savannah's arguably most famous murder and the legends that have followed it. But we can't start from the end, where the movie and the book, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, type place. We can't even really start with the 4 murder trials that Jim Williams faced and how the public split on his guilt and innocence throughout the 8 years it took to reach the conclusion between the last trial and the murder itself. And we can't even start on May 2nd, 1981, when law enforcement arrived at Jim Williams' home, the Mercer House, which is famous in own right, where they found 21-year-old Danny Hansford dead in Williams' office of a gunshot wound. We're going to start our story before them because, like Savannah, the people who played the pivotal role in the story have their own unique backgrounds and history. And while the movies and books have done a great job of playing up the drama of this story in a place like Savannah, the real-life version is just as colorful. So I wanted to kind of start there because I think we've all been to Savannah. We know what it's like, and I don't think it's easy to describe like the energy and the vibe you get until you go there.
It's really weird. It's like a mix of like when you get to like downtown Savannah, it's like a mix of like culture and history and then like frat boy bar life all in one. It's really interesting. And like you can see, the fort from the 1700s while you go to Wet Willie's and get a call cab. Like it's really odd.
I always said Savannah feels like something is sleeping in the harbor, like the city itself is breathing. But I don't ever get good vibes from Savannah. It never feels good to me. I would never walk alone in the streets of Savannah at any point in dusk until the morning. But it is an interesting. It's interesting.
Is it because like the crime aspect or the paranormal
It's people.
aspect?
It's the people. I would much rather run into a ghost in one of those alleys than like slip and fall in somebody's shit and fall in a hole like has happened in our group before. It's different. It's such a difference between the scenery, which is gorgeous and reminds you of being in old South, and then the people.
Yeah, I think that's a good point about the people. Like the people are interesting. I don't know if it's more so the tourist areas or just like the people. Actually, there's a great quote that I actually have in my notes, and it says that Savannah is like a beautiful woman with a dirty face, and it's like you can see how beautiful it is, but when it gets dark and when the shadows come out, that's more what Savannah is in the underbelly of it.
That's a good one.
I may have actually misquoted that, but that's basically what it was. But I think it's like, I think whenever I think about it, it's like a second home, but it has changed a lot over the years, but I think that weird underlying old feeling has always existed. But, anyways,
Savannah's a butterface.
sure.
That's
We'll go
what
with
you
that.
said, not me.
I didn't say it's a beautiful woman with a dirty little face. With a dirty little face.
That's what a butterface is.
Okay. All right. So one of the other bigger quotes that was mentioned in Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, which I thought was interesting, was people in Savannah gossip more than anywhere else, which was John Barrett's quote. What do people gossip about? Other people's behavior. The stranger the behavior, the better the gossip. The person that is being gossiped about knows that they are being appreciated and attempts to outdo themselves in the strangeness. And I think that's a really good, like, it's almost kind of like the perfect moniker for like Southern people in general.
Yeah, it's just the South.
It's just the South. And so, like I said, when I was working on this episode, I was trying to figure out the best way to set it up because there's a lot of avenues one could take. Because you could start with the book and kind of start with where, like, this is what the book said, but this is the truth. Or start at the murder and work backwards and then forwards. But I think kind of understanding the foundation of these people are going to be the best way for you to understand, like, what happened. And so the first main player you're going to meet in this story of Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil is James Arthur Williams. And he's played by Kevin Spacey in the movie. One of the funniest things I read was talking about Kevin Spacey playing James Williams is that John Barrett said that he did not have the charisma of Jim Williams at all. Matter of fact, John Barrett tried to send like clips of Jim Williams to Kevin Spacey, and he said, "Hey, no, I got it." And then when he saw the final cut of Midnight of the Garden of Good and Evil, he said that he couldn't figure out why he was playing Jim Williams like that, and then realized it's because he had listened to a recording from like the fourth trial when Jim Williams was all up on Xanax. And so he wasn't, like, in his mind, he wasn't that like cavalier, charming, charismatic guy that everybody knew. So that was interesting. So James Arthur Williams, I'm going to call him Jim just because it's easier, was born December 11th, 1930 in Gordon, Georgia. And if you've never heard of it, anybody else, most of us probably haven't either. It's a small town outside of Macon.
It's where
which
Gordon
is
College is.
Yeah, Gordon College.
Do you think anybody but maybe the three of us know where Gordon College is?
Georgians know.
Yeah, a lot of kids went to go to Gordon because it's easy to get into.
Is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
They'll take you at just over SAT passing.
You can
I'm not
go.
gonna-
You don't even have to apply. Just show up, and they're like, "Yeah, we
I
take
know.
personal checks."
Literally, it did not occur to me that Gordon College was in Gordon. I just thought it was somebody named Gordon.
She's a lawyer, ladies and gentlemen.
What I mean, being a lawyer doesn't mean it's geography related. So if you can picture it like in 1930, it was definitely small town. William's dad was a barber, and his mother was a bookkeeper at a local kaolin mine, which
Kaolin's a clay.
Hey,
they
Chris.
used to, yeah, they use it to coat. Sorry, I was twitching. Kaolin's a clay they use to coat paper, so it makes it smooth.
Oh,
Because
okay.
I mean, if you think about it, like paper is made out of trees, right? Trees aren't generally smooth, so like paper towels is just same thing. It's just they coat paper with it to make it nice and smooth. It's just white clay.
okay, that's interesting.
Interesting.
Yep.
That's what I coat myself with to be nice
Yep.
and smooth.
It'll work.
Kaolin.
I don't even know if we're saying Halen or Kalen.
Kaolin. It's
Kaolin.
kaolin. It used to be like Georgia's biggest export because like it's really hard to find, white mud in the wild.
Angie,
that's
since
really
she
what it
became a
is.
cat, decided to coat herself in kaolin.
I mean,
But yeah, it was huge export because you had to have it for like writing paper, and
That
there's
makes
only
sense.
so many places in the world that have it.
Okay.
So is it does it make the paper fancier the more kaolin?
I mean, it's a super thin layer they put on there, but that's what makes it
Mm-hmm.
smooth.
Interesting.
Oh, okay. I did not know that either. I didn't know where Gordon was, and I didn't know what Kaylin was. So he also had one sister named Dorothy. And so it was a really small family.
Wait, did she go to a place called Oz?
Actually, that's the name of his house was Oz.
Thank you for being a
I
friend.
thought he lived in Mercer House.
He did. I was just messing with you.
Oh,
We're
He
back,
also,
ladies and gentlemen.
so he also served in the U.S. Air Force before Don't Ask, Don't Tell became a thing, and began working at Klug's Furniture Company when he moved to Savannah.
Clugs.
I was about to say, anybody got a comment about Klug's? Chris just randomly knows what Klug's is.
It's furniture company.
I
Good to
mean,
know.
I don't know if I'd want to buy anything from Klug's. It sounds like I'm gonna trip over it. Whatever I get from there.
Can you imagine, like, the guy named Klug who opened this place, and it made sense for him to name the place Klug after him?
Well, I wonder, like, is it
Klug.
like an
Klug.
immigrant? Because like it may have been someone that had immigrated from like, Poland or fucking Yugoslavia.
And actually, that makes sense because his partner, I think, was German,
Yeah.
who did the antiquings when he started antiquing. And they talked about the fact that he grew up as a country boy, but by the time the murder actually occurred, he had gone from an interior designer to a wealthy antique dealer who was well known in Savannah society. He was actually extremely active in the preservation of Savannah Historic District. And if you've never been to Savannah, maybe prior to like, I don't know, the 1990s, Savannah was, I hate to say this, a shithole. A lot of it was
It was the
old buildings.
murder capital of Georgia for a while.
Murder capital of Georgia. I think the only time Atlanta beat it was during the Atlanta murder trial or Atlanta murder of missing children. But
Atlanta
the
child
houses,
murders.
I think they changed the name. They call it Atlanta murder and missing children, I think is the more appropriate way to say it, because there were other people, spoiler alert, that were murdered that weren't children.
Well, it's Atlanta, of course.
Well, they're also trying to like link him back into Wayne Williams because Wayne Williams murdered that dude. Hey, go check out that episode because we did that too. And so he was by the time he was 24, he had bought and restored 3 historical buildings in Savannah. And over 35 years, he would restore more than 50 homes in Savannah alone and other homes along Low Country in Georgia and Savannah, South Carolina. So you can imagine that this dude got some money. So there was a couple of notable houses he restored that I thought were interesting. There's the Oding Cells house, which is the oldest building on Washington Square, and that was 1797. The Armstrong house, which was the home built for the Savannah magnate George Ferguson Armstrong, who would house the law office of Jim's attorney, Sonny Seiler. It also was featured in movies like Cape Fear with Gregory Peck. And he actually, in a fun fact, Sonny Seiler was also a partner with my granddad's attorney. And so my granddad's attorney was actually out of Armstrong House too. And the actual house was also featured in Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. And then this was my favorite one I found out was the Hampton Lillibridge house, which was built in 1797, which was one of the few clapboard buildings in Savannah left after the Savannah fire. Jim actually believed it to be haunted and had it exorcised, and then subsequently moved it to its current location off of Washington Square. So it actually wasn't where it is now. It's now, yeah, it wasn't there. But he had to exorcise it before he moved it.
Exorcise the demon.
Did he put it on the treadmill?
I mean, I guess you could do either or, I guess.
Did he have it run behind the car as it relocated?
I just think to myself, like, this guy, like, even back then, Savannah was, like, known for being haunted. He's like, you know what? It's haunted. I'm going to exorcise it. But this made me mad when I read this, was that his biggest cash grab came in 1968 after he purchases an underdeveloped barrier island called Cabbage Island for $5,000. He later sold it for $900,000, which is the equivalent of $8.5 million in 2026.
I wish I could afford a barrier island.
Did they sell cabbages?
I think it was just a regular barrier island. I don't think
So
Cabbage.
yeah, I mean, they could have named it after. There could have been a guy that lived there named Cabbage, like
To be fair, that would probably be pretty accurate.
Skidaway, Jekyll, Tybee, St. Simon's, Little St. Simon's, Ossabaw. Like, God only knows how most of them got their name.
Well, clearly the problem is we weren't born in 1930 to buy these places, because in 1968 it was only $5,000. Now I don't even think you could purchase it if you wanted to.
Yeah, no, I mean, even if you could buy like Ossabaw, it'd be billions with a B.
So in 1969, he then purchased the Mercer's house, which was built in the Mercer. What was funny about the Mercer house?
He bought it in '69.
Oh, giggity. God. Oh, jeez. The cat, the cat is giving you a whole new attitude in life.
Watch your tail. Look. Bam, bam, bam.
And it was built and designed in an Italianate style for General Hugh Mercer, who was the great-grandfather of songwriter Johnny Mercer. Construction began in 1860, but it wasn't completed until around 1868 due to, I wonder why.
Was it the
Civil
big
War?
war? The war
Was it
of
the War of
Aggression?
Northern Aggression?
I was
Bam.
about to say, see, I was waiting because I knew as soon as
True
I said that,
Southerners right there.
I knew as soon as I saw you, I put that in there, y'all were going to yell the War of Northern Aggression. And ironically, no one by the name of Mercer ever lived in the home. So, you know.
That's interesting.
Yeah, literally they built it for him. I guess what happened is they just sold it to whoever ended up buying it initially. And then they sold it over to the Shriners, who had it before Jim Williams bought it.
Is it now the old Masons building?
What, the Mercer House?
Yeah, or is it
No,
just
they built, it's a museum now. If you were going to profit off of it, of course it's a museum now. Not only is it like a famous historical building, but hey, somebody done got murdered in it and they made a book about it.
Well, I know, like, I think the oldest Masonic lodge is in Savannah, but
It
they have
is.
like a few other locations around Savannah that are like also, Masonic. And I was
Did
gonna
they-
say, like, I can get us in there.
I was about to say, wasn't the is that what didn't they use the Masonic, the Freemason symbol to build Bonaventure Cemetery?
Uh-huh.
Did we not learn that?
We did.
So, you know, just more random stuff about Savannah. But by the time the Shriners were selling it, it had actually, by the time the Shriners finished with it, it had been like a decade before Jim Williams bought it. And so once he restored it, he actually ran his antiques restoration business from the basement of Mercer House. And it was said that a lot of times he would hire these young guys who would work for him.
I'm shooketh.
Oh,
It's almost like there's like
you should
boarding.
you should polish this desk with your shirt off. It's much
Yeah.
healthier.
In the basement.
What was funny is that like it was like the worst kept secret. Of course, you have this charismatic guy who's like an interior designer, an antiques guy, and he was like, "I'm bisexual. I actually see
What?
women."
And he dealt in antiques and historical homes. I'm shocked.
Yeah, but he was bisexual, guys. He was not the gay.
Well,
So I wonder if it was just like more socially acceptable than just being outright gay back then for him to
So
be.
there was a lot of talk about this in Lawyer Games, the book by Def Kirkland, and he said like it wasn't like it was a well-kept secret. Everybody knew he was because like he would have these grand parties. I'm gonna talk about that a little bit. He'd have these grand parties, and then there would be the after party, which were all the like sophisticated men who would hang out afterwards. And you had to have a special invite for that one.
Yeah.
And he
Homeboys having ditty parties.
the lube was whatever they used to shine up the antiques.
It was
yeah. Take that shirt off.
But yeah, it was, I mean, that was like, he even said, he's like, nobody in Savannah really cared because he was a charismatic, sophisticated guy who was basically very high profile in the area. He wasn't like this just random guy that people were like, oh, he'd be gay. It's like everybody hung out with him and he was like, oh, he definitely is on the spectrum and it's not the
It's
autistic
light
one.
in the loafers.
yeah.
What is it we say in bowling? It's not light in the, what is the other thing?
There's lots of statements like that.
Things we can't say out loud.
No, he said some things. Yeah, I can't remember, but it was fairly well known. So, and like I said, he was like the biggest highlight in Savannah. One of the biggest things was that he had these like elaborate Christmas parties. And it was always on the eve of the Cotillions debutante ball because it's Savannah and that's of course a thing. And like I said, they would have these big old parties, and it was so like well known, and you wanted to be invited that Jim actually had an in and out box for his invitations. And depending on whether he was pissed off with you or not, you were
That's
either in the inbox or the outbox.
that's what he called his butthole, the in and out box.
Oh my God. I mean, I don't know. I don't know that answer, but it was always one of the big things people talked about is that like and it kind of I guess garnered a lot of the gossip in Savannah too. Like you knew you were on the shit list with Jim Williams, something was going down, and you had to get back in his favor. So in 1979, there was this movie called this is just a fun fact that I thought was interesting. The movie The Ordeal of Mr. Mudd. I've never heard of this movie.
Becky,
What?
Sugar tank. He has a little sugar in his tank.
Oh yeah,
That's what it was. Okay.
he's sweet.
Yeah.
He's just so sweet. The Ordeal of Mr. Mudd was being filmed on Monterey Square, and that was sat adjacent to Mercer House. And Jim actually hung a Nazi flag outside the window to disrupt filming because the film company had declined to make a donation to the local Humane Society, which Jim's partner was the president, as Jim had requested. However, the congregation Mikveh Israel, which was located across the square, complained to the city. But
I'm shocked.
I mean, to be fair, I'm like, part of me is like, I totally get why you're complaining. The other part of me is like, you should have just made a donation. Why not make a donation?
Well, because they feel. I mean, again, that's kind of like strong arming them into giving money to something that they don't give a shit about. Oh, you don't want to give money to something I like? Here's some Nazi flags so you can't film.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, it's one of those things that it's like, it's such a, I don't know, it's such a petty Southern thing to do. Like, it's passive aggressive in like the worst / best way possible. But yeah, apparently it disrupted filming until somebody complained about it. So, and I get it. I get why if you're going to complain about, like, if you were going to complain about it, why you would complain about it. But I just thought it was funny. So Jim is sort of this big figure in Savannah. So that's one side of the story. On the other side of the story, all very different upbringing, very different background, is Danny Lewis Hansford. And he's arguably, to me, he's that person, if you actually read any of the books and if you read any of the stories and the true crime, he gets sidelined. He's the victim, and he gets sidelined because Jim Williams is just this big personality. And, we'll get into the whole like inconsistencies in this story, but there's a lot less focus on Danny as a person than there is about Jim and, how Jim portrays him because of the after the murder and into the trials. And he was born in Savannah, March 1st, 1960. And like I said, if you want to talk about polar opposite of Jim Williams, that was Danny's upbringing. It was wrought with a lot of difficulties growing up. His mother, Emily McGee, left school after 9th grade and was married in 1955 at the age of 15 to Danny's father, Charles Hansford. The two had a volatile relationship, obviously, and separated frequently. They divorced in 1961 when Danny was a year old, and then Emily married Edward Bannister in 1963 and subsequently divorced him in 1970. In 1970, Danny's father commits suicide. So his family is very volatile. His dad is in and out of the house. I don't think he really has a relationship with his dad for the most part. But, of course, by the time he's about 9 or 10 years old, his dad kills himself. Danny had 2 brothers and a half-sister. Danny's father barely had been around, if we talked about that. But the boys actually had no relationship with their stepfather. None of the boys finished high school, including Danny, and he made it through 7th grade, failed 8th grade, and then gave up.
Not a bright family.
No. And then in 1971, Savannah's historical Bethesda Home for Boys, which was it orphanage at the time. It's not an orphanage anymore. It's actually a school. Um, Actually took Danny and his brothers in, and it was actually recommended that the boys stay there. Emily refused. She's like, I'm going to take them. I don't agree with what you guys are doing, and I'm not doing it.
These my kids.
That's exactly it. Like, which is funny because now you think about how foster care is in present day, and you can't, like, no parent actually agrees with, like, foster care and what the foster care rules are for the most part. So just the idea that it's like, I don't agree, and even though I'm raising my kids like shit, I'm going to take them. And they're like, bet, have a great time. So there would be other occasions that Danny was actually placed in foster care. One would be at the Gold Cottage, which was a home for troubled and broken homes as well. But Emily did not agree with the rules and took him home again. So as you can tell, he was in and out of, I guess, a stable situation a lot. And his mother did nothing to help him. It was said when Danny was 15 years old, he was actually admitted to Georgia Regional Hospital for mental health treatment. I wonder why. He was only there for 2 days before he was signed out by his mother. Georgia Regional attempted to work a treatment plan for him, but the mom did not show up for appointments and refused to communicate further with the hospital. And it was actually mentioned in the book, Lawyer Games, that an observation by the staff stated that care and supervision of adolescent boys seemed to be a problem for the mother and that she needed supportive help, but was not willing to take the time or accept responsibility for working out a plan. So there was a lot of talk from Danny's friends, and actually, in a shocking turn of events, Danny has a girlfriend during this time. Her name is Debbie Blevins. She stated to the prosecution that Danny's life had been hard, large in part because his mother hadn't wanted him and his dad had killed himself. That was basically the summation of Danny's life.
These my kids.
I mean, that's basically it.
I mean, yeah, I can see where, I don't know if, I'm already thinking of, this charismatic man shows him attention. He goes over to his house to spend time with him, and he gets sucked into this lifestyle that he doesn't know how to be a part of.
There's a lot of talk that Danny specifically, like Jim's friends talked about how Danny was very inarticulate, that he was kind of gross. He had green teeth, didn't take care of himself.
Pass 8th grade.
Yeah, I'll say like.
There was a lot of talk about this because some of Jim's stories about, what happened, their relationship prior to the murder, he was basically like, he would tell me that there was nothing worth living for and I don't know what to do with myself. And people like prosecutors were basically like, you're telling me that this guy was super inarticulate, but yet he could elucidate to you how he felt and how he, in this very genteel, sophisticated manner. Please bet. That's not true.
Also, isn't like Jim significantly older than him?
Jim at this time, I believe, was 50. I'm checking my math. Yes, he was 50. And Danny was only 21. And there's a lot of inconsistencies. Yeah,
I'm already forming some pre-bias because here's the thing: green teeth stinks. Sophisticated older gentleman. I don't buy it.
Well, and that's part of the issue in the story was, and back in that time, we didn't really talk about power dynamics, and like, it was almost common that older gentlemen went after younger boys, especially
Green teeth? No.
Yeah, I mean, listen.
You want some Herpalades on your penis tip? This is how you get it.
Ironically, we'll talk about Joseph Goodman a little bit. He'll come up in a little bit. He's a good friend of Jim Williams as well. And he said during the trials that he's a great friend with Jim. They had a sexual relationship when he was 15, 16. So there's some consistencies there.
Does he have green teeth and stink? I mean, this is what I'm hung up on. Green teeth and stinky.
I mean,
is there a picture? I need to see a picture of dude.
I can pull up a picture of him. Actually, here's the thing now on this website, I can actually pull stuff up and share it to you guys.
Okay.
So let me pull up a picture.
I'm imagining it was a control, like a serious power dynamic thing.
I don't think Jim did it.
Oh, okay. She's already like hard take. Jim didn't do it.
Older
Let me
gay
see if I
man,
can.
an older rich gay dude, and a young poor
Let's see if I can pull him up.
kid. It's rough.
I mean, there's a lot that kind of goes into this as well. Talking about the fact that how they met is a little interesting. I hate to. I don't want to
Did
say.
you share the picture?
I'm about to.
Okay.
Give me 1 second. I gotta pull it up.
And why do I keep wanting to say Jim Henson?
I mean, almost similar in a way. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna share screen. Give me a second. Share.
Accidental porn. Accidental porn.
No.
I'm hoping.
Okay. Let me do this. Okay. Here we go. Popping up. The mugshot is Danny.
And then that's Jim Hansford right there.
This guy is Jim. Jim Williams.
See? See?
Yeah, that makes sense because again, his teeth don't look gray. I mean, they may be like.
This was his friend saying this, and let's remember that a lot of this conversation was happening during the trial. And of course, you're going to paint this guy as like, oh, he's disgusting, he's crazy, he's incorrigible. Jim was just trying to be a homie and take care of this guy.
He just looks like a young hillbilly. Like,
I mean,
he looks like any dude you'd see hanging outside of a gas station with like two of his buddies.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to be fair, there's a lot that goes into kind of the background, and it comes out. It's one of those things where, like, in hindsight, we all know, like, oh, you guys had a sexual relationship, and that was clearly like a long-term sexual relationship. But at the time, people, it wasn't discussed like it. It would be now.
It's behind closed doors in the South. You keep that to yourself.
Yeah,
Exactly.
they were just friends of Dorothy.
Yeah.
Hey, Dorothy, who is a sister.
What do you mean 50-year-old gay dude and 21-year-old young man to only have platonic relationship? Who would have thought otherwise?
And now, like I said when I started, Savannah was referred to as a beautiful woman with a dirty face. There's something innately beautiful about Savannah, especially in the historic district, but many can tell you there's a darker undercurrent when it comes out in the shadows. And this was sort of related to Jim and Danny, because as Danny got older, he became a hustler and a male prostitute.
Shocker.
Wait. I need to clarify something.
Sure.
I just saw the statue. That is not the statue I was envisioning. There's one with a draped cloth on it, and it looks like the Venus de Milo. That's the statue I'm envisioning when I talked about touching boobies.
I figured that was the case. That's why I was like, that's not the statue you're thinking of.
No.
Are you thinking about the one that's in the middle of the square park?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, this one is clearly a young woman.
Yeah. The bird girl's like 12.
Like 12.
Like, it looks like, yeah.
Yeah, we're not touching her boobie. Like, that's not the one I meant at all.
There is a statue.
You and
that's
Jim
like,
Henson, apparently.
I know, sir.
Do you know every time I wrote my notes too, I did type Jim Henson, and I was like, I need to just put Jim because I have no other way to write this that doesn't sound like I'm accusing the Muppets guy of being a
Side note,
pedophile.
Jim Henson was fucking awesome, and we're assholes for using his name this way.
I know. This guy's like dead, and he's like, I'm not that Jim. Wrong
And
Jim.
he was amazing.
Wrong Jim. So like I said, as he became a hustler and a male prostitute, Jim Williams would claim in his first, because there are multiple trials, that he was a good Samaritan trying to get Danny off the street. But it was well known that Danny and Jim had a sexual relationship and that Danny had lived at the Mercer house for about 2 years. So he was 18, 19 when he moved into the Mercer house.
Yeah.
So
he
just
randomly moved an 18-year-old boy he didn't have any relationship with into his home.
Well, and he would say like, oh, I let him stay up in a spare bedroom because he worked for me as an antiques. What did I call him? A restorian earlier? Whatever Chris is doing right now.
Yeah. Okay, here's what I think happened. Okay, and I'm not familiar with the details. He tries to take this kid in, show him the good life. This guy goes into a rage and like, oh, nobody cares about me. I'm going to tear stuff over. I'm going to kill you. So he shoots him.
I'm going to say Homeboy had groomed and maybe against his will, fucked this kid a couple times because he ends up being a prostitute and a hustler. So, like, I mean, I'm not saying the kid was on a good path to start with because, seventh grade education and all.
It's funny because it's like these are literally the two leading stories and the two leading perspectives people have on this story. If you think that Jim Williams is clearly not guilty, the story is he was a good Samaritan trying to help a kid out. Yep. And he went into a fit of rage and murdered him, and tried to kill him, and then in self-defense he murdered Danny.
See, I freaking knew it. I knew it.
That is not what happened.
Jumping the gun, though, but
that is not what happened.
I will be happy to tell you exactly what happened, and then you can make your decision on what you think prior to the trials. Because we'll have to split up the episode because the trials are 4. I really thought I could do this episode in 1, and then I started reading about the trials, and I was like, that's
There's
too
no
much.
way. Yeah.
There's no fucking way. So
wasn't there like 76 trials?
There was
82
4.
Acquittals.
It
Isn't there
was
4 acquittals? Yes.
There was not 4 acquittals. So, spoiler for next week, there were 2 trials where he was found guilty, the first 2. The third trial, it was mistried, 11-1 for guilty. But because somebody was saying he was not guilty, it was a hung trial. Don't make the joke. I already know what the joke you're going to make. Just stop.
I was about to
Just
make
stop.
it.
Just stop. And there's a lot of, I would say, opinions about why it was a hung trial, why that person was not guilty all the way.
Let me ask you a question. How did Jim supposedly meet Nick?
Danny. To Jim and Nick.
Yes.
I mean the barbecue place.
Yeah. How did they originally meet?
How did he get some barbecue off that kid?
Well,
Because he definitely met him before he was 18.
Yes. Well, the thing was, there's no actual like origin story, because the only person who was alive who said their story was that it was Jim Williams.
Well, what about the girlfriend then? Does she not know?
She does. So she talks a little bit about it. She knows that Danny is a hustler and a male prostitute, and his friends do say like he met Jim on the square. Apparently, back in the day, it was very common for male prostitutes to get picked up in the Savannah Historic District. So they would, cruise on looking for a little fun, and it would inevitably lead to the sex, the sinning.
So trying to help this male prostitute that he met get off the streets.
Yeah, actually, one of his friends did confirm that he had
just
been doing
offered to brush his green teeth with his penis.
Yeah,
that's true. It was dental hygiene.
That's all we were looking at here.
Well, and that's exactly sort of what their friend said. Is like they met. He was a male hustler and a prostitute, but Danny stated he was doing sexual favors for the man in exchange for money and for his car. Because Jim Henson. Now y'all are making me say it.
You know what you just described was just him being a male prostitute, right?
Yes.
Sexual favors for money is kind of how that whole job works.
He had a car. He was getting money, and he told his friend that like if a guy wants to jack me off and give me money for it, what's the big deal? I ain't having to work for it.
I get it.
I mean,
how much money are we talking? Because and how rough are homeboys' hands?
I don't have that answer.
I mean, he was pretty wealthy. Jim Hansford, Hanslow.
Jim Williams, guys.
Jim Handjobs.
Williams.
Jim Handjob was.
I'm just saying, if some random old dude was like, "Hey, dude, I'll jerk you off for $10,000," I'd be like, "Well, I'm married, so let's make it quick." But
so it was actually funny because this guy's saying like, "Hey, I hired this kid because I feel bad for him because he's sucking my dick, so I'm going to give him like a legitimate job." Very pretty woman of him.
He brought in a fuck slave,
and then he also was letting him stay there just if he needed to, even though his address was basically and if I say
his address was 69 Mercer House.
It was 429 Bull Street, which I will refer to, so I'm glad you mentioned that. But the rumor was that their relationship was actually very contentious. Jim very
Jealous.
jealous guy.
I knew
Very
it.
jealous guy.
Of course.
They would get into fights, and then that would lead to Jim making up with Danny by showering him with gifts. Jim was also very jealous of Debbie,
Oh,
the
he was a
girlfriend.
love bomber. Okay, yeah.
Yep. And Debbie stated that Danny would constantly ask her to marry him, and she was not interested in getting married to him. She was trying to keep it casual.
Green tea.
And yeah, exactly.
Also,
And
fucks dudes on the regular.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Not really
And-
a marrying type.
And it was also like so bad that Jim actually tried to prohibit Danny from meeting up with Debbie and having a relationship with her, which Danny, of course, was like, I'm not doing all that. Actually, in one instance, Jim had given Danny a necklace at Danny's request because they had had a fight. It was a really nice gold necklace that was about $400 in 1981. And it was conditioned on the fact that he break up with Debbie. So Danny turned around and gave it to Debbie. And when Jim noticed Danny wasn't wearing it, Danny told him what happened, and Jim did not take it well, which is
I'm so shocked that Jim was angry.
well,
So-
in a
It also feels like homeboy, like the kid, is actually like, apart from gay for pay, might actually just be bisexual, like legitimately. And Jim may not be okay with that.
well, it's true. Well, after the necklace incident, 2 days later, Danny was dead.
Yeah, like it feels like Danny may have been legitimately bisexual, and it's not like Jim, like societally bisexual,
Right.
versus like, and Jim just wasn't gonna have it.
Well, and it's really sad. One of the things they found during the investigation of the murders was a sketch that Danny drew that looked like Jim. And on the back, he wrote school several times, and it had underlined, "What have I done? I'm 20 years old. I suck dicks and get fucked by different people for money."
So he is a little more eloquent than can barely speak.
Yeah,
So when people are the prosecution saying, "Oh, he's stupid," but you're saying he's going on and on about dying, that leads into that maybe this kid did have a death wish. Because you said earlier they were arguing with Jim that the guy never said. How could he say this if he wasn't eloquent? But if he's writing all this on the back of a picture,
I think it's like, to me, it just is like goes to show that this kid is victimized, in my opinion. And he's a kid. That's exactly what, like,
it feels
is
like he's a kid that's had a shitty life and then was groomed by an old man with money.
Yeah, and I think I think the truth is somewhere in the middle about his how he elucidates and carries himself, because clearly this guy has to have some charisma if this multimillionaire old antiques owner isn't kicking him to the curb every time they fight.
Or maybe he can suck a golf ball through a water hose and just, homeboy's like, yeah.
That is a visual I didn't need.
I mean, he's a male prostitute. That's probably how they met. Like, gotta be good at something.
So, like I said, 2 days before the actual murder, there's Jim and Danny have another big fight, and that's that gold necklace incident. So that flash forward to May 2nd, 1981. Joseph Goodman, that person I had talked about earlier, who was good friends with Jim. Jim was his best man in his wedding, but they had a sexual relationship when he was a teenager. He received a call from Jim and Danny at 2:05 a.m. Jim had called to tell him that an antique buying trip they had planned was canceled, and Joseph spoke to Danny, who appeared calm, and had asked if he was disappointed he could not go on this canceled trip. So initially at that time, the next thing that happens is Goodman had told homicide detective D.E. Reagan that he then received a second call at 2:22 a.m. from Jim, who stated that he had shot Danny and to come quickly.
17 minutes later, huh?
17 minutes later, law enforcement would not receive a 911 call until 2:58. And the geography of Savannah, we're well familiar with it, but Savannah is set up as in squares.
It's a grid.
It's like a grid. Yeah. The historic district is just a big grid. And it's very small. Savannah Police Department was maybe a dozen blocks away from the Mercer house. And they said that the estimated time in which it took for law enforcement to get to the house was 90 seconds.
Yeah, it should have been like a minute and a half, 2 minutes. Like,
Yeah, it did not take long.
you could take a damn pedicab over there in 2 minutes.
Well, thinking about it at like 2 o'clock in the morning, there's not a lot of people out. You're going to
Yeah.
get there quickly. But to put in perspective, timeline is Joseph Goodman talks to them at 2:05. 2:22, Jim calls, says, "Hey, I shot Danny." 2:58, 911 is
36
called.
minutes later.
Yes. So several law enforcement officers arrived at the same time, along with Joseph Goodman and his girlfriend, Nancy Rushing. 2 law enforcement officers were met at the door by Jim Williams, who had left the door open, who stated, "I shot him. He's in the other room." Danny was found in Jim's study. There was a table, and what was noted initially was that there was a table and an antique grandfather clock that was turned over. So what vibe are you getting at this point?
They started fighting again.
Okay.
Yeah, and it got a little violent probably from both of them.
Okay. Well, when they started investigating it, what they found, was law enforcement did find an unspent bullet casing, near the fireplace in the office, along with what appeared to be a ricochet shot off the desk that hit the northern wall. So if you picture it the way initially it's described, is that Jim is behind his desk, Danny's in the front of the desk. So when you think about this crime scene, start with that image. Jim also had made another statement right before he was Mirandized, in which he claimed that Danny had been shooting at him, so he shot him. Jim had also called his 2 lawyers at this point, and they were on the way. So he not only called his friend first, he also called 2 attorneys to meet him at the house right before, or in tangent to the time in which he calls law enforcement.
So there's a ricochet bullet off the desk.
That hits the northern wall. So if you think about it, it's like desk,
Yeah.
shot off.
Wall. Yeah.
Yes. And then there's an unspent case by the fireplace in the office. So the
Were
way the
these
office...
Were they revolvers?
They were Luger's 22s. Like old school Lugers.
And they both had pistols at
Yes.
2 in the morning.
Yes.
Sounds like one of these pistols may have been planted.
So let me tell you what they found when they started doing their investigation. Later, Jim made a statement. We're going to start with the statements because that kind of sets the scene in which law enforcement is going to start investigating this. He stated that he was sitting in his office and Danny was at the TV playing a Superman game, because that's, I guess, how you talk about video games. He was playing a Superman game. He was playing a video game. He came in and wanted me to join him, and I refused. He got angry, and we argued. Talked also about the London trip, because he was angry he wasn't going on the London trip. Joseph Goodman was going. He came back in with a gun and shot at me 3 times, almost hitting me. I got my gun and shot him.
Okay.
He told Joseph Goodman as well, "I always keep my composure. I went in and sat at my desk and started doodling. And at that point, after they had fought, Danny walked in and came in with a gun and shot at him." So just picture that when we start talking about what the crime scene actually looks like. And Lawyer Games actually has like the crime scene photos. And it was hard at first reading it because I'm like, I don't understand contextually what's happening in the book. But then when you see the pictures, you're like, oh, okay. Now it makes a lot of sense.
He probably had like a little holster under his desk.
So what initially they found is that he had a gun. This guy kept guns everywhere. Matter of fact, at one point, there's a conversation between Depp Kirkland, who had actually come on the scene as the chief assistant district attorney, because the DA couldn't be there. And at that point, because there were lawyers involved and there was a high profile crime, he was there. And Jim Williams made the comment, "If I wanted to shoot you, I could," because there was another gun sitting right next to him. And they hadn't secured the scene because initially they thought it was a self-defense case because, hey, it's being reported I had to shoot him. He shot at me.
Well, and we have to remember, like, this guy, Nick, his name's Nick, right? Chad. Danny. He's a hustler. He's basically, he's a hustler. He's not a nice guy. I don't care that we say he's only 21. He's from the streets.
Yeah.
I believe he had a gun.
So let's talk about this.
I'm not going to say he didn't get a gun from the house, because especially if they were both antique Rugers, like, is there a case with 2 guns that should have been in it somewhere in the house?
There was an unholstered gun in his bedroom or I'm saying there was a holster with an empty, there was no gun in it in his bedroom, and then there was a gun sitting on his desk.
But
Now
also,
let's
you're saying this kid walked into the room with a gun intending to kill him, fired 3 times, missed all 3. Homeboy had the presence of mind to not dodge or run away, but grab his gun and then kill the kid.
Yes, that's what he's saying.
Homeboy fired both guns. Fuck him.
So let's talk about this a little bit. So when Savannah Police Department started actually investigating the case, there were a few things they did find that were inconsistent. The first thing that they found was that Danny's right arm was extended from his body. He was laying face first into the ground, and his hand was perched on top of the gun rather than it being gripped.
Yeah.
There was blood caked on his hand, but no blood on the rug underneath. And Danny's thumb was tucked under his hand against the palm, sitting on top of the gun.
Yeah, you can't fire a gun that way. You can't hold a gun that way.
And I think, if I'm not familiar, forensics talked about that in rigor mortis like that can set very quickly, especially if he was seizing or spasming as he was dying. But his hand was basically curved, sitting with the gun like this. So
so it looked like somebody slid the gun under his open hand.
Yes. The second biggest clue was not readily visible at first, but then later it was a hard point that like the defense attorneys could not contest because it was just weird. There was a chair that had been in the room that had appeared to have been repositioned as if it had been picked up and put up. However, the problem with that was that when they found that chair, they found that the chair leg was actually sitting on top of Danny's pant leg. So it was as if somebody had picked it up and put it on top of him. Like it couldn't have, they tried to recreate it later in I think a couple of the trials and for prosecution's rebuttal. And there was no reasonable explanation why the chair would be like that otherwise. Like I stated, they also found, when I talked about that overturned table and grandfather clock, there was no damage done to it. It looked like they had gently been placed on the ground. And we got to remember Jim Williams was an antique dealer.
Yeah.
So there was no damage to the table. There was no damage to the grandfather clock. It was also just the inconsistencies themselves. They believe they had probable cause to arrest him. The stories just weren't lining up because he was saying like, hey, he came in and shot me. He was super angry, all this different stuff. Joseph Goodman would tell law enforcement that when he talked to Danny and Jim, he was fine. He didn't seem like he was mad about anything. They were joking around. Everything seemed okay. And then 20 minutes later, then there was this call from Jim saying that, hey, I had to shoot Danny. But high-profile case, famous guy, kind of well-known in Savannah. His attorneys were able to actually wake up the judge, Eugene Gadsden, to hear an ad hoc bond application at like 4 o'clock in the morning. The hearing actually happened at Judge Gadsden's house, and bail was set at $25,000, which Joseph Goodman bought in a paper bag in cash. So he was released from jail pretty much immediately. So once again, like showing that Jim had a lot of influence. You could also see that he has rotating defense counsel during the actual trial. So it's just, I don't know. Every time I think about the fact that this guy just was like, hey, call the judge so I can get out of jail because I know everybody. Just shitty. Like, just not a nice person at all.
You gotta remember this. It was the South in the 80s. It was the Good Old Boy Network.
Yep. What was also insane was that Jim also did a bunch of interviews during the time between the murder and the actual first trial of the case. And he had different stories depending on which way the wind was blowing that day. He stated that Danny and him had gone to see a movie earlier at a local drive-in theater because everybody knew it was, so nobody could see them together. And by the time they had returned back home, Danny had smoked 9 marijuana cigarettes and had drunk half a pint of whiskey. Now, I also want to
9 joints, huh?
9 big old marijuana cigarettes, which they found marijuana cigarettes in Jim's office. One of the most notable pieces of evidence, which Depp Kirkland talks a little bit about his theory at the end of the book, What Happened, is that there is a recent, very fresh cigarette burn in the leather top of the antique desk.
Oh, no. Homeboy fucking pissed off the antique dealer and got shot. That's brutal.
Who do you think, Angie? With the evidence.
Well, I think that you said, oh, they caught him, and you know, Danny was calm, but so was Jim.
Hmm.
So clearly there was another fight. Like you can't have that both ways. And then you say that, he's a terrible person because he called the judge. Becky, your dad would do the same thing if he knew it. Like, come on. People
Well,
with influence don't sit in jail.
well, that's the thing is,
It doesn't.
like, my thing is, it's like that is not proper protocol whatsoever. That would never happen in. Well, I wouldn't say never. It probably could still happen. But the thing is, at the same time, it doesn't make. This guy literally just murdered somebody, and you couldn't wait maybe 24 hours before you're giving the guy a bond to get out of jail.
We have a felon in the White House. That's the United States. People
I
with
mean,
privilege don't sit in jail. They run the country.
that's kind of true.
That's very true.
But I think that they probably did fight. I mean, I think there was a fight. I think Danny Boy probably said some shitty things. Was, you know, probably said something awful to him about their relationship. About, you know what? I don't even like you. I'm just here because you feed me and I've got a house and I use you and I'm gonna go to my girlfriend. And then put that cigarette out on his desk.
Hmm.
That Mary Jane.
I think it may. That's what I was thinking. Is it's like you have two big, very expensive items sitting in your house, and they're gently put down. Meanwhile, there's one recently fresh cigarette burn. That's probably the thing that sent him over.
Yeah,
Mhm.
homeboy was talking shit and was like, "Fuck
Yep.
you." Put the joint out on the desk, and
Yep.
homeboy
It was crime and passion.
Jim pulled his gun, and then murdered him,
Yeah.
and then staged it.
Well, the story was that Jim that was coming up with was that the two had played a game on a new computer he had recently bought for Danny. And as he wanted to leave, Danny accused of him not enjoying the game, grabbing him by the throat and telling him, "You've been ill. Why don't you go off someplace and die?"
I can actually see him saying that. Why don't you just go somewhere and die, you perverted old man?
I'm not going to joke. I really think that is something he did say. I don't know if it was in the context of which this happened.
Probably not the video game, but yeah, that sounds like a true statement.
No,
Like when they were fighting.
I can see homeboy, the kid, getting pissed because he wasn't going to England. I can see them saying a bunch of shit, and I can see the kid like, "Well, I only fuck you for the money. I love my girlfriend.
Yeah.
This is bullshit. Why don't you go somewhere and die?" And then just walks over and puts a cigarette out, and then catches a bullet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next thing that Jim says happens is that Danny then stomped the keyboard of the computer, then started breaking furniture. Jim went into the office to sat down at his desk.
What broken furniture?
Well, that was the other thing. I don't remember them mentioning the keyboard, but the only thing they really mentioned was the antique desk grandfather clock and table.
Which isn't broken, and they're full.
Right.
They're made of glass and wood. Like what?
Yeah. And then Danny came in and stated that he was leaving tomorrow, which Jim said fine. And then he returned back and said, "You're leaving tonight," and pointed the Luger pistol in his direction and fired. Jim said he didn't know how many times. Maybe once, maybe twice, maybe 3 times. But there's actually no signs of 3 shots, just one. And then he fired back at Danny. And at that point, he called his attorney, police, and a friend just after the shooting, which actually didn't coincide with what actually happened. This is what he told the story
He
to
called his
the
buddy,
interviewers. Yeah.
and then his lawyers, and then the cops.
Yes. In the Georgia Gazette interview, there was also mention of a nearly identical incident that occurred nearly a month to the day in which the murder happened, where Danny had damaged some more furniture and then shot the Luger. 4 of the initial responding officers in April were actually the same officers that responded out to the murder. And it was reported that time that Hansford had come home and appeared heavily influenced. A verbal argument ensued. Hansford went into a rage, breaking several antiques, and Jim had told him that Danny was a guest staying at the house and that Danny had threatened to do bodily harm to Jim and himself. At that time, Danny had discharged a pistol inside the house, 2 rounds in the home and 1 outside. So 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 shots. And during the murder investigation, Jim actually claimed that Danny had shot at him 2 or 3 times during the April incident. However, at the very end of this, Danny is charged with criminal damage to property in the second and reckless conduct. He's not charged with aggravated assault, and they said there was thousands of dollars of damage done to the antiques, but they only charged him criminal damage to property in which he had done $600 worth of damage because that's
Yeah,
what
it's a
Jim had
misdemeanor.
alleged.
Yeah.
No. So the $500 threshold between a felony and a misdemeanor, but he didn't say the thousands of dollars. And Jim actually bailed out Danny the next day after this had all happened. Depp Kirkland actually had stated in his book that the events didn't make any sense either. Is it's like, how can somebody shoot at you 2 or 3 times and yet you're still alive?
Because clearly the guy should have gone and taken more practice before trying to kill somebody. Like, I'm sorry. Like,
Can you imagine? He's like, I almost got you this time. I'm coming back.
woo, swiggity swooty.
But Jim actually told the Georgia Gazette as well that he told Danny, he's like, it's fine. Get it out of your system, Danny, while he was shooting the gun. Get it out of your system and put the gun away.
Yeah, that's how you respond to someone shooting at you.
Mm-hmm.
It's all right.
And then Jim had also told law enforcement that Danny was just dropping by at that hour because he wanted a few dollars for a date he was going on. Now, remember, it was like 2 o'clock. I probably should have put this in perspective. The April incident happened at 2 o'clock in the morning as well. And, I mean, I thought it was pretty weird that somebody's going to go to your,
He needed money, so he went to offer a little chug-a-lug.
When Jim had said, that was his boss. He knew he could ask for money. He always let him stay over if he needed to. Yep.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple of $100, but I'm going to need something from you.
Well, on top of it, it was stated in the April incident that Danny had lived at the house for 2 years, even though Jim kept saying he didn't live here. So, there was enough inconsistencies in the story that the prosecution thought that, hey, you know what? We're going to rock and roll this trial, see what happens. So the true bill for the indictment came back June 12th, 1981, about a month after the murder. Jim was arraigned and pled not guilty August 12th, and then the trial itself would start January 25th, 1982. And, like most murder trials, you either get a guilty, not guilty, that's the end, and we move on with life. However, the first trial will start January 25th, and it wouldn't be until 1989 before there's a true resolution to the case and whether he's found guilty or not guilty and all the interim shenanigans that occurred through that time. So that's where I want to pick up next time, because I thought to myself, we could do the 4 trials because it seemed like, it was open and shut. Hey, prosecutorial misconduct, we're overturning it. You said something here, we're going to overturn it. But that was not the case. And then the stories changed every time. And there was different witnesses. You had affidavits coming out from people saying that Jim told me to go tell you that this happened, and then that we knew Danny Hansford and that Hansford was going to murder him. It was all crazy. So that will be where we pick up next time.
I like it.
My ending thought is both of them sound like not particularly fantastic people. The difference is Danny had his entire life ahead of him to make better choices. And unfortunately, he never got the chance to be a better person because the guy who was supposed to be helping him just wasn't a good person.
No, I think
he's kind of a piece of shit.
I think it was kind of important. Yeah, I think when you're in that environment and you're raised that environment, it's like a black hole trying to get out of it. And here you have this influential person who's giving you money and items.
I care about you, and I want you to be okay. However, as everything else in this kid's life, it's going to come with a caveat of you touching my pee-pee. And I'm sure he'd been abused his whole life. Like, you can imagine.
I'm sure he was not a good person either. I mean, I don't know.
He never had the chance to be.
Not even that. You think about it. He 21 years old, he's murdered. 8 more years of people just dragging his name through the mud to talk about how he was mentally unstable and that, Jim was a philanthropist and wanted to save him. And,
and think about it. The one person he loved, this girl, every time he'd ask her to marry him, it's like, no. I mean, that's gotta kill. I mean, he's probably thinking, I'm just worthless.
Yeah. So I think it'll be a good time to pick up next week about, what happened with the actual, trials, because
Jim's innocent.
There was a statement made by I forget Lawton's first name. The district attorney. The district attorney was one of the only attorneys to stay on for all 4 trials, and I'm sure he was like, God, I'm over this already. Because when the murder actually happens, he's just been elected as DA, and then it's still 9 years later before it actually happens.
Jesus.
So, but I mean, the story's just it's just insane. So, and you got to feel like that's what I was saying like earlier about Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. You get a lot of like the colorful history of Savannah.
So how did it get that title, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil?
So the story is that they would do hoodoo in the Bonaventure Cemetery, and it was considered you would go at midnight to do these things because it was the in between times, and they called midnight the Garden of Good and Evil was Bonaventure Cemetery.
What does that have to do with this guy?
Because they're talking about like the root workers and the
Yes.
he ties it all in. A lot of it doesn't actually have to do with like.
It's just Savannah.
trial.
They're trying to like set up this like imagery of Savannah and like really this ancillary stuff you hear like Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil and stuff like that. That's all just fluff. There's nothing to do with the actual story of the murder.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I haven't really mentioned it, because I am going to talk about that a little bit. There's like I started with at the very beginning, John Barrett inserts himself as like the third person narrator at the very beginning of the story. He acts like he was there when the murder happened. He didn't show up until I think while he was, I believe Jim Williams was waiting either for the first trial or the second trial.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he wasn't even really involved. And then all of these characters, like the Lady Chablis, all of them are still very famous in Savannah. Like these are famous things that happen in Savannah, but they have nothing to do with the actual story. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. Well, thanks, guys. I got to check the sound. I don't know how this episode went. Please let us know if it sounded like shit. Let us know if there was anything we want us to add. Tell us who you think actually did it. Was it a self-defense case? Was it a tried and true murder case?
Crime and passion.
But yeah.
Angie's just on his side, no matter what.
This is the devil's advocate. She's a black cat. So yeah. Anyways, see y'all later. Deuces. The episode should be out on YouTube today, and then we will upload the actual audio podcast on our normal stuff. You can find us on Facebook on the Free Rotation Podcast. We're on Twitch right now. You can find us here. But yeah. All right. Bye,
Also,
y'all.
we're gonna get back to the weird crypto and
Yes.
aliens.
Yeah, all of that's gonna come back. It's all coming back to how we used to do it.
It's all
It's just
coming back. So
This is
just
our
trying to.
warm-up.
This is our warm up. It's trying to make sure everything works well. Chris probably needs a different mic because we can hear him clicking his mouse. But you know what? That'll be fine.
That's the cartilage in my wiener, man.
yeah.
But
Deuces
anyways-
up, down.
Just checking the comments in Twitch.
Yeah.
Marco said, "Don't forget Spotify," and Kat said, "Missed the entire thing, but they're innocent."
No.
Yeah.
There, as in a place, is innocent. He doesn't know how to spell there.
Savannah is an innocent place. And just so you know, the background we were using today, that's the Mercer house.
Oh, mine is I don't know.
The background behind us,
Oh,
not
back
you.
here. So it's got camera and there's a poster. Next week I'm gonna make it a strip club.
You really could make, you know what, you could probably make it like a little courtroom. Like every week it's themed to whatever the episode is.
Oh, can I wear a suit next time and just sit
Yeah.
in the courtroom like dun dun?
Yes.
Oh,
And
and I'll be the cat, and I'll be the lawyer cat, and be like, "Your Honor, I
can,
promise I'm not a cat."
You can
At the
also
end-
like upload a background for the cat and it's just like,
Yeah.
Can you add like a scroll across it just says produced by Dick Wolf at the end?
maybe I
Dun,
should. Like, hey, you know, the sky's the limit. 2026 is very different than 2023, but we're back, bitches.
But our format going forward will be like, this is Becky's true crime, and then Chris will have something, and I'll have something, same as we did before.
Can we go somewhere and film people moving boxes while the murder police talk to them and they don't stop moving their boxes for whatever reason? They're like, I'm just keep loading this truck while the murder police talk to me.
Yeah. You just see people making coffee in the background. We're investigating a murder.
What happened? There was a triple homicide. Oh, well, these boxes really got to get on this truck.
Yeah. So, and also since we have it on Twitch, if you have questions or you want to add anything at the end, no, Chris. No, Chris.
I still have the Diva and the
No,
Pikachu.
Chris. No, Chris. All right. See y'all later. Deuces. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.